We're in a time of very wild transition for a lot of these UFC weight classes, with several vacant titles and very few long-time champions pulling ahead of the competition. With that in mind, I thought it would be fun to take a stab at guessing who will hold each UFC crown by the time November of 2024 rolls around. So let's just get into it. Women's strawweight. I don't know if there is a more stable-looking championship fighter in the UFC outside of Islam Makhachev, spoiler alert, than the strawweight queen Zhang Weili. Despite 115 pounds being the best division in women's MMA, although flyweight is doing well, Weili just has a level of physicality and confidence that is unmatched in the division right now. And the way that she's rounding out her game in recent times, it's very impressive. I'd love to see how she fares up in weight at flyweight, but for now she's a very easy pick for this division. Women's flyweight. This division was kind of in a rough spot during the Shevchenko era, where it wasn't really producing talent to the level you'd hope for, but those days are truly done, and the current crop at 125 pounds is quite interesting. And now that Shevchenko is no longer champion, it gives the division room to breathe. And in that room, I do think that a fighter as young and totally gifted as Erin Blanchfield will eventually find her way into a title shot. And right now, I wouldn't back any of these flyweights to beat her if she's on form. I think she gets the belt and holds it. Women's bantamweight. As the first women's division in the UFC, Bantamweight used to be a pretty big Showtime division for the sport, during the days of Rousey, Holm, Tate and eventually Nunes. But that era is very clearly over, folks, and right now the title does remain vacant. And with the belt being contested between Mayra Bueno Silva and Raquel Pennington, I see Bueno Silva taking that title with yet another submission win. Maybe Juliana Pena will work her way back into a title fight before too long, but anyway, it's by no means a stacked division right now. But hey, a lot can change in 1 year. Women's featherweight. To be brief, if you're not going to sign the talent and finally bring in some rankings, it's time to do away with this belt. You can of course have featherweight fights, but crowning another champion here with an empty division beneath it is kind of pointless. So let's just move on. Flyweight. Okay, so I would say that this is my first, maybe slightly controversial pick here. I'm not sure how much Brandon Moreno has in the tank as far as climbing to the top for another shot at the belt. It may happen in the future, but I actually think that Alexander Pantoja could hold onto that title for another 2 defenses. I think if he can overcome the wildness of Brandon Royval, he could end up getting matched up against Moreno once more, especially if Moreno wins his next fight. And yeah, I don't know who the single best flyweight on the planet is, but Pantoja has a path towards a decently long title reign here, at least for another year I feel. Bantamweight. I'm in a minority in thinking that Sean O'Malley is way better than most fans believe, and to be honest, I would favour him against every member of the top 15 except for my pick, Merab Dvalishvili. I just think that this guy is a nightmare in the cage, and the way that he nullified guys like Jose Aldo and Piotr Jan, confident and elite level strikers, yeah, good luck beating that guy. I think Aljamain Sterling might eventually leave the division, and Merab, who could lose against O'Malley, is still kind of the safe pick here. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to let us know in the comment section below, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button if the mood strikes. Anyway, back to the video. Featherweight. Okay, so this is a nervous pick. It's hard to know how to plan out a year for Alexander Volkanovski in his current state. We know he has a title fight scheduled now for February, but does he spend an entire year back at featherweight? Is he vulnerable to a contender as fantastic as Ilia Topuria? Does he even have the time to put off an actual attempt at being a member of the lightweight top 5, if that's what he wants? For me, I'd like to believe that Volkanovski wins this next fight and then leaves for a go at the lightweight top 10. So I will pick Volkanovski. I do think that at his best he can beat Ilia Topuria at least right now, but I don't know, I might still be coping after UFC 294, so don't go too hard on me if it doesn't come true. That was a tough night for the fan in me. Lightweight. As I mentioned before, I don't know if there's a more solid and sturdy looking champion in the sport right now than Islam Makhachev. The dude just keeps getting better and better. Lightweight was formerly the finest division in the sport, but I do think that that title has moved on to bantamweight. But Islam does still rule over a very, very tough weight class, and I would love to see him compete 2 or 3 times in the next year. In my opinion, he's the best fighter in the sport, and while he's in his prime, I would love to see him test himself to the true limits of what he can do against many contenders at lightweight and beyond. Welterweight. Another maybe slightly controversial pick incoming. I think Leon Edwards is going to beat Colby Covington, and despite having a lot of faith in his potential, I think he can also beat Shavkat Rakhmonov as well. Leon, somehow in my mind, is still an underrated fighter, and with Hamzat Chimaev now gone, I'm going to stick my neck out there and say that Leon Edwards still has the belt by the time November of 2024 comes around. It's not my most confident pick, and Shavkat is a very close runner-up, but I'm going to go with it. Middleweight. Speaking of underrated fighters, Dricus du Plessis was a fighter who I was very high on before he came to the UFC. Then I lost faith in him after seeing some of his early performances, some of the holes in his game. But now, once again, I think I've made sense of the guy a bit. His physicality is incredible for the weight class, but there is more to him than that. And after watching back the Whittaker win again, I see him as a very solid pick for middleweight glory here. I think he's a lot more well-rounded than people think. And even with guys like Strickland, Hamzat and Israel Adesanya beneath, I think DDP beats Strickland in their scheduled fight, and I could see him holding the belt for at least one defense. Light heavyweight. 205 pounds is a very hard one to judge. There are a lot of wild action fighters and then slightly deficient chins, which is a very weird combo. And I do think that the creativity, endurance and momentum of Yuri Prochazka will be enough to beat Alex Pereira and maybe another rising contenders, perhaps Jamal Hill, before the next year comes to a close. I just can't really make sense of Yuri's upper bound limits within this sport, but the guy clearly has something and I'm willing to believe in it. So I'm going to back his unique brand of chaos to serve him well once more. Heavyweight. And finally we come to the heavyweights, a division with a level of uncertainty around its title picture that is only really rivaled by the women's bantamweight division at present. I would be very surprised if the champion Jon Jones sticks around longer than 2 or maybe 3 fights at this stage, but this 7 or 8 month injury is going to basically ensure that he has the belt up until the middle of summer. And if the promotion do still go ahead with the Stipe Miocic fight in September or October, leaving the interim champion Pavlovich or Aspinall on ice, then Jones, if he wins, which I believe he will still be the champion by next year. So yeah, it is an unfortunate thing that we're not going to see more movement in the heavyweight division, but hey, the man got injured, so what can you really do? But what did you make of my picks? Plus, who do you personally think will rule every UFC division by this time next year? Do let us know in the comments section below, and if you want to like the video and subscribe, that would be awesome. As always, thank you for watching.